Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphan Last, aka Skylar Madison, and surprisingly, I did not have much time to work on a video, but somehow I managed to spend 10 hours on this image. I wanted to make a video about Blender, but I settled on trying to make this into a tutorial, and even though I like some of the aspects of what I wound up inking from one of the images that I have inside of my current sketchbook, I like this image, but there's a lot to not like about it. There's things that I've started to kind of realize with this image that there are areas of improvement that I need to kind of work on, such as I'm good at drawing rocks and such like that, but trying to get the rocks to kind of form into a cohesive structure, such as a mountain. I need to work on that. Some of the composition, to me, it just kind of feels like it's slapstick together, and I got too much into the romance of, you draw a rock, and there's an abstract painting, a rock. There's not really that much difference, and so I got really into that, and it just kind of went a little bit overboard. And I think that maybe the image looks a little bit too messy, too much going on all at once, too much detail all over the place, and I think it causes a problem. And so that's something that I'm going to be working on in the future. But that's great that I'm running into these problems right now, before I even start working on the sample pages, the 5-page sample for Image Comics. I'm thinking, for those of you that haven't gotten the notification, I have an idea for a comic book, and I want to work on it for a number of years, and it'd be awesome if I could actually get paid for doing it. And I've looked at the self-publishing options, and that's cool. Maybe I might go that route. But the thing is if I get picked up by Image Comics, if I'm good enough to get picked up by Image Comics, then why not? Like, that sounds awesome to me. And this video here actually is showing the first time that I've really kind of tried to actually take cross-hatching seriously. The only other video that I have where I've done cross-hatching was when I was teaching the grid method of how to draw an image and such like that. And it was a good video. The image turned out looking just fine, but I wasn't taking it very seriously. It's like, all you need to do is kind of scribble sometimes, and you come out with, something that looks like the subject matter that I was drawing, which is stone, and yet you still get kind of a crosshatch look. And yeah, I mean, it wound up looking good on that image, but comic books, they tend to be a lot more refined and such like that. And so with the cross-hatching that I've done here, it's something that I'm a little proud of to some degree, but when I wound up coloring the image, I wound up making some decisions, and I was still trying to think of everything like as if I was inking an image. That's kind of the theme of this whole workflow that you're watching here, where I'm trying to ink this image and do the grayscale at the same time, and kind of feeling as though that whole process of making the grayscale image is the inking process. There are some benefits and disadvantages to that, but maybe I might explore it a little bit further, but if it doesn't work out, then it just doesn't work out. And there are things inside of this composition that I was never proud of. The page right foot, I fouled it up. But the thing is like I said, I spent 10 hours on this image, and there came a point to where it's like, okay, it takes up such a small amount of space on the real estate. It also winds up being inside of one of the darkest areas in the composition. And so it wasn't really something that my eye gravitated towards. I know that's not a very strong excuse or anything like that. Generally, I want to have all of the anatomy and stuff like that to actually work. but if you have to use a little bit of impressionism in order to get something to work, or if impressionism just helps you finish, then maybe that might be able to help you. I know that there's one particular comic book artist, Jack Kirby. Okay, he's known as pretty much the early master of comic books, and there's a number of philosophies that I've listened to that he had, such as like having different body parts in different time zones from one another, and it's gotten me kind of thinking about comic books, because like you're not able to it's not animation, but it's not quite a storyboard either. And so the way that Jack Kirby was telling the story with his artwork, it was as if his fist or something like that was in a completely different time zone from his leg. And that's interesting to me, because it gets me to kind of think of the composition and like time. Timing is a big thing with animation, timing and spacing, but like with animation, it's like, from what I'm trying to understand, it's like, okay, so maybe multiple perspectives were being used. I don't know. Not only that, but it's just like maybe the pose may not have made sense all the time in Jack Kirby's work. Maybe that's the issue, but yeah, it had all this energy in it, and some of the reason is because his, like, a character's fist was treated as if it was in a completely different time zone from his legs. That sounds interesting to me, and it's something I'm going to kind of explore a little bit with my artwork, but I'm not going to delve too much into it right now. But like, this is kind of interesting. As I'm inking this this mountain and such like that, you can see me going to the grayscale layer and the inking layer, and kind of getting inspired by what I was doing with the grease pen. I'm sorry, with the grayscale layer, and that being a little bit of a guide. Now, normally when I'm inking something, I'm pretty confident that what I'm inking is pretty much finished work and it doesn't need that much adjustment. But this image, it was drawn inside of my sketchbook, and so I thought, well, I'm going to just take some creative liberties and improve the image. And in some ways I kind of did. The pose of the main character that's going to be inside of my comic book, Atler, his head is just in a weird, wonky position. Some people left a critique saying that his head is too big. I don't think that's really it. It's more like if his head was really in that position, his neck would have to be really long and kind of goofy looking. And so I wound up changing the position of his head, but it takes a while for me to get there. For the longest time, he's basically the headless horseman, or something like that. And in a way, it looks kind of cool, but I don't have any characters planned as like a headless swordsman or anything like that. But yeah, like here, once again, you kind of see me kind of creating a sketch with my grayscale layer, and sometimes almost inking it. As I went out further and further out into the background, you could see that I'm obviously working with grayer colors for the blacks, and I was thinking that that might help create the feeling that things are further off into the distance. I'm not sure if I succeeded with that, but it still looks very good. Color is new to me, and so I can see something is wrong with the color, but I'm having difficulty identifying what it is. And some of the problem is like I'm trying to create the native color inside of an object, and I'm also trying to paint in light into objects. And because that's how things are in real life. I mean, you're not always looking at the native color of objects. You're looking at reflected light. You're looking at all these other different things. And so trying to paint an image and yet still trying to create, I don't know, some visual appeal, some variety in the image. It's really difficult. And but I did find it rewarding and interesting. We'll have to kind of explore further with that in the future. There's a number of things that I was trying out with the inking where it's similar to things that I've seen Frank Miller do, and especially in his comic book series Sin City. Like, you wouldn't believe, his artwork is amazing. Especially in his early career. He's inspired so many people to become comic book artists, and there's a reason for that. It's because Frank Miller used to be a great comic book artist and a great, comic book writer. Nowadays, I don't think he has it in him, to be honest. I haven't seen anything from his work recently that's been of interest, but whenever I go about trying to ink something, or whether it's digitally or whether it's just on a pencil and with a piece of paper or my sketchbook or something, whenever I go about inking something, I'm visualizing the things that I've seen inside of Sin City, inside of Frank Miller's artwork, and there's some really cool things. You just gotta look. You just gotta read that comic book, or at least look at the artwork in it. I don't necessarily recommend the plot as like some amazing work of fiction. It's not. It's stupid violence. Like, it's violence to the maximum. It was just countercultural nonsense that was ramped up to 1,000, and that's why it was interesting, because it was a taboo idea to have a comic book like that, it seems. And so it's just violence for the sake of having violence. It's kind of stupid, but at the same time, it's freaking awesome. So here you can actually see me. I went ahead and put the initial sketch up on the stacking order so that I could work on the face, and you actually saw me adjust the position of the face. Now maybe maybe his head is still too big, but I kind of don't care. Like, ultimately, when push comes to shove, if it comes to like having more and more realism versus having, a pose that's more dynamic or dramatic or something like that, I'm kind of more leaning towards, embellishing the truth so that I could have something that looks more interesting, that sort of thing. And here's the weird thing: while I was inking the things that look like nature, and during the times where it felt like I was succeeding at that, especially when I was painting it, like, the more and more it wound up looking like nature. The beauty and such like that you see in nature, I actually viscerally felt as though I was in nature. It was kind of bizarre, and I was really happy to experience that. I kind of want to draw more nature at some point in time, because that was kind of cool. And here I'm kind of close to finishing up the inking process, or at least it looks like I am. I think I'm looking over a few things at this point and refining stuff. I remember I had this situation where Atler was just kind of really sticking out. Well, no, he wasn't sticking out inside of the composition very well, and so I actually added 2 borders to him. I have thicker black lines around him, but that didn't seem like it was enough, so I wound up actually creating a full-blown silhouette. Now you saw me do that a little bit here, but I think I do it even more so inside of the coloring stage. And yeah, I think generally the lighting makes sense inside of the scene. Overall, there are problems with the lighting. It just kind of seems like it's two compositions to some extent with the background, where, you know, there's one scene going on the right side of the page, and then a completely different scene going on the left side of the page. And I'm not sure if I like that, or I'm not sure if I like that, or if that's actually the actual whole point of the image. And initially I tried this thing out where I just color the image with the color layer, with a color blending mode or something like that, and the image just wound up looking kind of god-awful. And the very next day, you even saw me just desaturate it right there, and then I created a duplicate that's fully saturated and just erased parts of it to see if that would kind of help improve it a little bit. And then I tried adding some highlights and maybe some shadows to it. It still didn't work out very well, but I wound up using a kind of a different approach at inking the background, or at least coloring the background. Again, color is new to me. I don't understand everything with color, so although I went for a number of ideas here and some of the ideas didn't work out, it's, you know, you're learning, and as long as you're learning, then you're making progress. And you know, you can see that it just doesn't look right, and I keep on working on it until I'm just like kind of disgusted with the image, to be honest. And then I went, yeah, right here, this is when I just get rid of all of that crap, and then I start from scratch with the coloring process. I also kind of go back a little bit, and I add a few more values that were unsettling the eye, that didn't really seem to make sense to me. And here I'm using gradient maps, and so I spend a good amount of time making selections around specific things so that the right stuff gets the gradient map, and the things that don't need that gradient map don't get the gradient map. And so yeah, I just go through everything that doesn't need brown on it, or at least that's at least what I'm thinking I do. Yeah, it's brown blending mode. It's on the screen right now. Obviously, everything is brown. So yeah, the things that are that were gray on the screen are the things that aren't going to receive the blending mode. And so here I'm just kind of getting the color for Atler's coat, but I think I actually really liked the color of the tree, the leaves of the tree. They kind of turned this pinkish color that really kind of appealed to my eye, and so I kind of stuck with that. And then I went back to using a color layer. You know, the gradient map workflow, it's fun to work with, but I am not confident. I don't think it's my workflow. Like, I keep giving it a shot, and it's not my workflow. It just doesn't seem to be working out. Like the color, like I know what colors I want on the canvas, and it's like, even though I select a color, it looks completely different because of a blending mode, and so like I don't like that, and everything winds up super saturated. Like even this image wound up being super saturated, even though I left a lot of gray in it. But I'm pretty sure I left that concept, of leaving gray in the composition. I'm pretty sure I did it wrong, but whatever. And here I'm introducing other colors. I figured there would be some blue reflected light from the sun on the underside of the of the trees and stuff, and I thought maybe, you know, it might be cool if there was some reddish sunlight predominantly on the left side of the image, and some yellow sunlight. Ultimately, I don't know, maybe that was a mistake. I don't know. I don't know about color that well. I'm still kind of figuring it out. And the more and more I try to color in light into the scene, the more and more frustrated I get, because the native color has just completely disappeared. The brown, it looks like. It's just, I don't know. This is some of the reason why I don't really like working in grayscale that much. I mean, it's something I've been experimenting with quite a bit frequently, but it just, there's so many things that just seem to not turn out quite right. And but it's fine. I look at the image and it kind of looks like a type of lomography, like a really old photograph. And I like that to some extent, as long as I'm able to replicate that look from one panel to the next, to the next, to the next. If I'm able to do that, then having images that come off this way might actually look kind of cool. Like, imagine Lord of the Rings with a lomography sort of filming style, where everything had that look, that coppery sort of feel to it. To me, that sounds kind of interesting, and to some extent they kind of did that, kind of old Western sort of camera lenses and stuff like that. They actually got their hands on a bunch of those, and that's cool. And one of the last steps was just trying to get the ground to look right, and that's something that didn't quite turn out right. And like I think I said earlier, a lot of what I was thinking is that, like, throughout the entire coloring process, I should be thinking in terms of inking. But I think that, I don't know, there comes a point where you've just made the image just a little bit too busy, even though it's really well executed, and there's like a lot of work that went into it and a lot of craftsmanship in it. I think that the image got a little bit overbloated with just too many ideas all at once. But like, you can see it on the screen for yourself. I mean, it's not a bad image. It has something about it that looks a little bit unsettling, but there is a lot of depth to it. And so, like, that is cool. And so this is the perfect sort of image for me to be drawing right now, because, you know, I'm thinking about submitting a 5-page sample over to Image Comics to see if I could actually get picked up by Image Comics. And so, like, if I can go through concept images that work and don't work, that have a good workflow and don't have a workflow, like, I'm able to find out something that works perfectly for me, so that by the time that I submit that 5-page sample and Image Comics gets back in touch with me, if they do, hopefully they do, hopefully I'm that good, I will be ready with the workflow, with the quality, and with all of the concept designs all worked out. And so right here, pretty soon here, right now, you can see the final image. And, you know, I think I did a very, very good job. I spent a lot of time on the original image, actually, probably just as long as this image right here, actually. Inside of my sketchbook, I probably spent 10 hours on this image. And then later on, like this week here, I just went ahead and inked it, and it took another 10 hours. So this is a 20-hour long project. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to join my community in Discord, or go ahead and follow me on Twitter. A link is in the video description below. And if you'd like to support my channel, feel free to click on my mascot. It's a picture of my mascot in the upper right corner of the screen. It goes to my Patreon. Any support would be much appreciated. And if you'd like to see more of my content, feel free to click on anything that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.